When my children were young, my home was always filled with noise, laughter, footsteps, arguments. The sound of plates clattering in the kitchenette was all music to me. Every morning, I would wake before the sun, pack their lunches, and watch them run out the door, waving their tiny hands as if I was their whole world. Back then, I never imagined a time when that house would grow so quiet that I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. It happened slowly. You know, one by one, they grew up and left. I told myself it was normal. That's what children are meant to do. A bird must fly when its wings are ready, I used to say proudly. But no one tells you what happens to the mother bird when the nest stays empty. For a while, they called often. My son Ahmed would ring me every Sunday. My daughter Layla would video call and show me her little ones. Those calls kept me alive. I would sit by the window with my cup of tea, waiting for the phone to ring. But over time, the calls grew shorter. And then, they stopped. I remember one Sunday clearly. I had cooked their favorite meal, chicken curry with extra spice, just how Ahmed liked it. I set the table for 4, even though I was alone. I told myself they might surprise me, maybe drop by with the kids. The food grew cold. The night grew long. No one came. That night, I didn't cry. I just sat there, listening to the wind outside. My heart felt heavy, but there was no anger, only a deep, quiet emptiness. I realized, in that moment, that I was no longer needed in their world. The next morning, I went through my usual routine, made tea, watered the plants, folded the laundry. But something had changed inside me. I stopped waiting for the phone to ring. Days turned into weeks, and the silence became my new companion. Sometimes I would look at old photos, their smiling faces, their messy school uniforms, and whisper to myself, I did my best. And I did. I gave them everything I could, my time, my energy, my love, maybe too much of it. But motherhood doesn't come with a promise of gratitude. It comes with sacrifice. Still, deep down, I held on to one small hope that one day, they might remember the woman who stayed up all night when they were sick, who skipped meals so they could eat first, who prayed for them every single day. That hope was the only thing keeping me from breaking completely. Little did I know, life had its own way of testing a mother's heart. The silence didn't come all at once. It crept in quietly, like dust settling on furniture when no one's around to clean. At first I thought they were just busy. Ahmed had his business, and Layla had 2 small children. I told myself, they'll call when they can. But the days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. My phone stayed still on the table, like a forgotten friend. Sometimes I would pick it up just to make sure it was working. I'd check for missed calls or messages, hoping I'd overlooked one. There never was. I started keeping a small notebook beside my bed. In it, I wrote their birthdays, anniversaries, and the last time they called. I thought it might help me remember, but instead it became a quiet record of absence. The last entry I made was over 6 months ago. One evening, I gathered the courage to call Ahmed myself. His voice sounded distant, busy, distracted. Ma, I'm in a meeting right now. I'll call you later, okay? He didn't. When I called Layla, she sounded tired. Ma, I'll talk soon. The kids are a handful. I could hear them playing in the background. I smiled through my tears and said, all right, darling, take care. After that, I stopped calling. I didn't want to be a burden. I thought if they needed me, they'd reach out. The truth is, silence can be louder than words. It fills every corner of your home. It sits beside you at dinner. It follows you into bed at night. Sometimes I'd try to keep myself busy cooking new recipes, knitting, cleaning cupboards that were already spotless. But no matter how much I moved around, the emptiness stayed. On quiet nights, I would sit by the window and talk to the stars. I told them about my day, my worries, my prayers. I wondered if my children ever looked at the same sky and thought of me. Then, one rainy evening, I received a message. My heart leaped when I saw Ahmed's name, but it wasn't what I hoped for. Ma, can you send me my old documents? I need them for some work. No, how are you? No, I miss you. Just business. I didn't blame him. I packed the documents carefully, tied them with a string, and sent them the next morning. As I sealed the envelope, I whispered, take care, my son. That was when I realized sometimes love continues, even when communication stops. A mother's heart doesn't close, it simply learns to love in silence. I thought that was the hardest part of growing old, but I was wrong. The true test came later, when silence turned into distance, and distance turned into forgetting. The first year they didn't visit for Eid, I told everyone they were too busy. Ahmed had a big project, I said. Layla's children were sick. People nodded with sympathy, but I could see the questions in their eyes. For years, our home was where everyone gathered. The smell of biryani would fill the air, and laughter would spill from every corner. My children would help me set the table, teasing each other the way siblings do. The sound of family, that's what I used to live for. But that year, the table stayed empty. I still cooked their favorite dishes, out of habit more than hope. The biryani sat untouched, its warmth fading like the years between us. When neighbors came by to wish me Eid Mubarak, I smiled and said, they'll come next year. But deep down, I wasn't sure anymore. The next year came, and still, no one came home. I began noticing little things. The photos on the wall started to fade. The laughter in my memories grew quieter. Even the house seemed to sigh with loneliness. Sometimes I would hear a car stop outside and rush to the window, my heart racing, but it was always someone else, never them. I told myself I shouldn't expect anything. Children grow up, they build their own worlds. But what do you do when you realize you're no longer part of those worlds? One afternoon, a neighbor's daughter came to visit. She brought her mother along and said, Auntie, your house smells just like my childhood. Her words made me smile, but they also hurt. Her childhood smelled like my cooking, my warmth, the same warmth my own children seemed to have forgotten. Later that night, I sat by my sewing basket, repairing a tear in one of Ahmed's old shirts. He had left it behind years ago. The fabric had grown thin, but I couldn't throw it away. I stitched it gently, as if my hands could still care for him from afar. I thought of calling him again, but my fingers froze on the phone. What if he was busy? What if my voice made him sigh in impatience? I didn't want to hear that. Not from my son. So I put the phone down and whispered instead, I hope you're happy, my child. That became my nightly prayer for both of them. Not for them to come home, but for them to have peace, even if it meant without me. Still, a mother's heart never stops hoping. Every time the wind rustled the gate, I looked up. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart skipped. Because no matter how far they go, no matter how many years pass, part of me still waits by the window, hoping that one day, they'll remember the way home. It was a quiet morning, just like every other. The sky was soft and gray, and I was sitting by the window with my tea, watching the birds hop along the fence. Life had settled into a routine, lonely but peaceful. Then I heard the postman call out, Auntie, there's something for you today. For a moment, I didn't believe him. Hardly anyone wrote letters anymore. Most of what came in the mail were bills or advertisements. But when I opened the gate, he handed me a small envelope. My name was written in handwriting I hadn't seen in years. It was Layla's. My hands trembled as I held it. I stood there for a long moment, staring at her name. The ink was slightly smudged, as if written in a hurry or with tears. I walked back inside slowly, clutching the envelope to my chest like it might disappear if I let go. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I made myself another cup of tea, as if I needed to prepare my heart first. The house felt unusually quiet, waiting with me. Finally, I sat down and tore the envelope open. Inside was a single page. Her handwriting was the same as it had been in Swanit, a little tilted to the right. Ma, it began. I know it's been a long time. I don't know how to start this letter, except to say I'm sorry. My eyes blurred before I could read the rest. I pressed the paper to my lips and let out a shaky breath. I had waited years to hear those words, and now they were right there, in my hands. She wrote about her life, the children growing fast, her husband's long hours, her endless exhaustion. She said she often thought of me when cooking, when her daughter got sick, or when she sat alone after a long day. She ended the letter with, I miss you, Ma. I'll come see you soon. I must have read that line a dozen times. I'll come see you soon. It felt like a promise, like a little light flickering back into my dim world. I folded the letter carefully and placed it beside my bed. That night, I slept better than I had in years. I dreamed of Layla as a little girl running through the house, calling, Ma, look at me. Her laughter echoed in my ears even after I woke. In the morning, I took out one of my old shawls, the one she used to borrow when she was cold, and washed it. I wanted her to find it fresh and warm when she came home. Days passed, weeks to. She didn't come. But I didn't lose hope this time. That letter, simple as it was, had already done something important. It reminded me that love, even buried under years of silence, can still find its way home. It was late in the afternoon when I heard the sound of a car stopping outside my gate. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart gave a little jump, that sound had become rare around my house. I wiped my hands on my apron and went to the window. There, standing by the car, was a man in a crisp shirt, looking uncertain. For a second, I didn't recognize him. Then, he looked up, and I saw those eyes, the same eyes that once looked to me for comfort after a bad dream. That it was Ahmed. My hands trembled as I opened the door. Ahmed, I whispered, afraid he might disappear if I spoke too loud. Assalamu alaikum ma, he said softly, almost like a stranger. I wanted to hug him right then, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the distance that had grown between us, or maybe it was pride, the quiet kind that keeps you standing when your heart wants to fall. Come in, I said, my voice breaking just a little. He stepped inside and looked around. Nothing much had changed. The same old furniture, the same curtains, the same faint smell of cardamom from the kitchen. But he looked different, older, tired, maybe guilty. I was nearby for work, he began, and I thought I should stop by. After how many years? I asked, smiling gently to soften the words. He looked down. Too many. I poured him tea, just like old times. He didn't say much, and I didn't ask too many questions. We just sat there, two people separated by time and silence, pretending everything was normal. After a while, he finally spoke. Ma, I know I haven't been a good son. I should have called. I should have come sooner. I stayed quiet. The ticking clock filled the space between us. Then, he said something that made my eyes sting. When I became a father, I realized what you gave up for us. I didn't understand before. I looked at him then, really looked. Beneath his confident face, I saw the same boy who once clung to my hand at the school gate. Afraid to let go, I reached across the table and touched his hand. Ahmed, I said softly, it's enough that you came. He blinked quickly, fighting tears. Can you forgive me, Ma? I smiled through my own. I already did, long ago. For the first time in years, the house felt alive again. The walls seemed warmer, the silence softer. When he left that evening, he hugged me, not quickly, not awkwardly, but the way he used to, holding on a little longer than needed. As I stood at the gate watching his car drive away, I felt something lift off my heart. Maybe forgiveness doesn't change the past, but it makes peace with it. And that night, for the first time in a very long time, I whispered, thank you, Allah, for bringing my son home. After Ahmed's visit, my heart felt lighter. For the first time in years, I woke up with something close to joy. I replayed our conversation in my head every morning. His smile, his voice, the way he called me Ma again, like he used to when he was small. But in the quiet moments, my thoughts drifted to Layla. I still had her letter tucked safely under my pillow. Every night before sleeping, I would unfold it carefully and read those words again. I'll come see you soon, soon. Such a small word, and yet it held so much hope. Weeks passed, then months. Each time my phone buzzed, I reached for it quickly, half expecting her name to appear on the screen. But it was always someone else, a neighbor, a delivery message, or some random call. Never heard. One morning, I decided to call her myself. Her voice was cheerful but hurried. Ma, I was just about to call you, she said. Things have been crazy here, but don't worry, I'll visit next month for sure. I smiled, even though a small ache grew in my chest. Next month, I repeated softly, trying to sound hopeful. That next month came and went. Then, another. Sometimes, I'd cook her favorite dish, okra curry with extra lemon, and imagine her sitting at the table, laughing like she used to. I could almost hear her voice teasing, Ma, you still cook better than me. Those little memories kept me company. One evening, I received a short text. Ma, I'm so sorry, can't make it this time. Kids have exams, soon, I promise. I stared at the screen for a long while. Then I put the phone down and whispered to the empty room, it's all right, my child. I understand, but the truth is, a mother's understanding often hides her pain. I went to her old room that night. The air smelled faintly of old perfume and dust. Her photos still hung on the wall. Her graduation, her wedding day, her first baby. I ran my fingers along the frames, tracing her smile. I'm still here, Layla, I said softly, whenever you're ready. Days became seasons. I learned not to expect her anymore. The waiting turned into a quiet habit, like watering a plant that might never bloom again, but still believing one day it might. Sometimes, neighbors would ask, when's your daughter coming? I'd just smile and say, soon. That word had become both a promise and a prayer. Still, no matter how many times she postponed, I didn't let bitterness take root. Maybe that's what being a mother truly means, to keep loving, even when love has no schedule. One evening, as I folded her old shawl and placed it neatly in the cupboard, I whispered to myself, maybe she won't come, but I'll keep her room ready anyway. Because hope, like a mother's love, never really fades. It just waits quietly in the corners of an empty home. It was early winter when my body first began to feel weak. The mornings were colder, and the sunlight that once warmed my hands now felt distant. I told myself it was nothing, just age, just tired bones. Mothers, after all, learn to endure quietly. But that day, as I stood in the kitchen stirring a pot of soup, the room suddenly began to spin. The spoon slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. I held onto the counter, breathing hard, trying to steady myself. A deep ache spread through my chest, sharp and heavy. For the first time, I felt afraid. I managed to reach my chair and sit down, pressing a hand to my heart. The house was silent, as always. There was no one to call for help. I looked at the phone on the table and thought of Ahmed, thought of Layla, but my hands were trembling too much to dial. After some time, the pain eased, leaving me weak but alive. I sat there for a long while, staring at nothing, realizing how fragile I had become. That night, I didn't eat. I just lay in bed, listening to the ticking clock. Every sound felt louder: the creak of the fan, the distant barking of a dog, my own shallow breathing. I wondered if anyone would notice if I didn't wake up the next morning. The next day, my neighbor Amina stopped by. She took one look at me and said, "Auntie, you don't look well. You need to see a doctor." I smiled weakly. "I'm fine, dear, just a little tired." But she didn't believe me. She made me promise to go for a checkup, and she even accompanied me. The doctor said it was my heart, not serious yet, but I needed rest and someone to look after me. That night, I finally gathered the courage to call my children. Ahmed answered after a few rings. I told him gently, "The doctor says I must be careful now." He sounded concerned. "Ma, you should have told me sooner. I'll send some money." "Okay, make sure you buy your medicines." Money. Always money. I wanted his time, his voice, his presence, not his wallet, but I only said, "Thank you, my son." When I called Layla, she didn't pick up. Later she texted, "So sorry, Ma, I'll call you tomorrow. I've been so busy." Tomorrow never came. Lying in bed that night, I looked at the ceiling and whispered, "Ya Allah, give me strength." I wasn't angry, just tired, tired of waiting, tired of hoping. But even then, a small part of me still believed they would come. Because that's the strange thing about a mother's love. Even when her body weakens, her hope stays strong. As I closed my eyes, I promised myself, if they ever do come back, I'll welcome them with open arms, not complaints. Because love, no matter how forgotten, deserves forgiveness. It happened on a quiet Sunday morning. The kind of morning where the air feels still and time moves slowly. I had just finished my prayers and was sitting by the window, sipping tea. The sky was soft and golden, and for once, I felt peaceful. Then I heard it, the sound of a car stopping outside my gate. I didn't rush to the window this time. Over the years, I had learned not to expect too much, but when I finally looked up, I froze. Two figures were standing there, Ahmed and Layla. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. Layla's face looked older, tired, but her eyes were wet. Ahmed stood beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. They both looked hesitant, almost ashamed. I opened the door slowly. None of us spoke for a few seconds. Then Layla whispered, "Ma." Her voice cracked, and tears spilled down her cheeks. Something inside me broke, not from pain, but from relief. I stepped forward and pulled her into my arms. She trembled against me like a child again, sobbing into my shoulder. Ahmed joined the embrace quietly, his arms wrapping around us both. For the first time in years, I felt my family whole again. We went inside, the same living room that had once echoed with silence, now filled with soft voices and laughter. Layla looked around, touching the old furniture, the faded curtains. "You kept everything the same," she said. I smiled. "I was waiting for you." Ahmed sat beside me and held my hand. "Ma, we're so sorry. We were selfish. We forgot what really mattered." I looked at him, my son who had once cried when I dropped him off at school, now a man with tears in his eyes again. "No, my child," I said softly. "You didn't forget, you just got lost for a while. We all do." We spent the whole afternoon talking. Layla cooked in the kitchen while I watched, correcting her as I used to. The smell of spices filled the air again. Ahmed fixed a loose door hinge that had been broken for months. It wasn't the food or the repairs that mattered. It was the sound of family returning to a home that had been waiting. When evening came, they sat with me on the porch. The sun was setting, painting everything in gold. Layla leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "Ma, how can you forgive us so easily?" I smiled gently, because love doesn't keep score. It only waits. They both fell silent after that, and for the first time in a long, long time, the silence around us felt warm. As the sky darkened, I looked at my children and whispered a prayer of gratitude. Life had taken them away, but love had brought them back. And in that moment, I understood something simple but true. Forgiveness doesn't change the past, but it heals the heart enough to face the future together. When I look back now, I realize that life has a way of testing how much love a heart can hold and how much pain it can forgive. I used to think being forgotten by my own children was the worst thing that could happen to me, but time has shown me something different. Sometimes, love only finds its voice through silence. Those years of waiting, of eating alone, of talking to the stars, they changed me. They taught me patience, humility, and faith. I learned that motherhood doesn't end when your children leave home. It simply takes on a quieter shape, one that loves from a distance, prays in secret, and forgives without being asked. When Ahmed and Layla finally came home, I didn't feel anger, or even relief. What I felt was peace, a peace that only comes when you stop holding on to what could have been, and start accepting what is. I saw in their eyes the same love I had once given them, only now softened by their own regrets. That day, as we sat together in the fading light, I realized that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to remember with kindness instead of pain. It means understanding that everyone, even our own children, can lose their way before finding their way back. Sometimes I still wake up early and sit by the window, just as I used to. The house is quieter now. They both have their own lives again, but the silence no longer hurts. It feels gentle, like an old friend who reminds me that love, once given, never truly disappears. If my story has taught me anything, it's this. A mother's heart never stops loving, even when it's broken. It waits, it forgives, and it believes, not because it's easy, but because that's what love does. And so, when I close my eyes at night, I whisper a simple prayer. May every child remember their mother before it's too late, and may every mother find peace in knowing that love, in the end, always finds its way home.